They mocked Aarav for failing the same exam again, and again, and again. But every night after pushing his tea cart through the village streets, he disappeared somewhere nobody noticed. Years later, the entire village froze in shock. This is the power of determination, not taking no for an answer. To him, giving up wasn't an option.
This is just the beginning.
16-year-old Indian teenager lives with his widowed mother in a tiny clay brick house near the edge of Sundarpur Village. Every evening after school, while other children studied at home, Aarav pushed a tea cart through crowded streets to survive. And every year, his exam results failed him. Again, and again, and again. But deep inside his exhausted heart, a dream refused to die. He wanted to become a pilot.
One day, I'll fly too.
Not because anyone believed he could, but because every airplane crossing the sky felt like proof that impossible things could still rise. The evening trains rattled softly through Sundarpur Village. Dust floated through narrow roadside markets glowing beneath sunset light. Children in clean uniforms hurried home carrying school bags. But 16-year-old Aarav Sharma walked in the opposite direction, pushing an old tea cart through crowded streets. Steam rose gently from the kettle. His school books rested beneath the cart beside loose coins and cracked cups. Inside Sundarpur Government School, students gathered nervously around the examination board. Excited voices filled the hallway. But Aarav stood frozen. His name appeared once again beneath the word failed. Laughter spread quietly behind him. Tea seller wants to become a pilot. He can barely pass mathematics. He should just work full-time. Even some teachers shook their heads sympathetically. Not cruelly, just hopelessly. Aarav lowered his eyes silently, then folded the result paper carefully into his pocket. That evening, he still pushed the tea cart through the market, still served customers, still smiled politely. But after midnight, when the village finally slept, Aarav sat beneath a broken streetlight near the railway crossing and opened his books again. Aarav's mother, Meera Sharma, stitched clothes late into the night to support them. Her hands had become rough from years of work. But every evening, she quietly saved tiny coins inside an old steel container. One night Aarav discovered it accidentally. Inside were crumpled rupee notes. Small savings. Very small. Meera smiled softly when he asked about it. For your pilot training someday. Aarav stared at her silently. Ma, we barely have enough for food. But Meera shook her head gently. Poor people survive by eating less sometimes. Then her eyes softened. But dreams die when people stop believing. Months passed. Aarav continued failing practice exams. His side hustle consumed most of his energy. Tea delivery before sunrise. School during the day. Street vending until midnight. Study after midnight. Sleep only a few hours. The boys in the village laughed whenever airplanes crossed overhead.
Just not
Look,
today.
Pilot Aarav, don't crash into the trees. Even some relatives advised him to quit school entirely. But every night beneath that dim streetlight, Aarav continued studying. Alone. Hungry. Exhausted. Determined. Because some dreams survive only through stubborn faith. One monsoon evening, heavy rain flooded Sundarpur Village. Most shops closed early, but Aarav still pushed his tea cart through muddy roads hoping to earn enough for school fees. Rain soaked his books completely. By midnight, his mathematics notebook had dissolved into wet paper. Aarav stood silently beneath the storm holding ruined pages in trembling hands. Years of struggle suddenly felt pointless. He looked toward the dark sky, and for the first time, his dream felt impossibly far away. Slowly, he sat beside the road and cried quietly in the rain. Not because he hated hard work, but because he feared hard work might never be enough. An elderly railway station master named Mr. Iqbal noticed Aarav sitting alone that night. Mr. Iqbal had watched the boy study beneath the station lights for years. Without speaking much, the old man sat beside him. then quietly handed Aarav an umbrella. "You know," he said softly, "airplanes rise against the wind, not with it." Aarav looked up slowly. Mr. Iqbal smiled gently. "The sky does not ask where a person came from before allowing them to fly." Those words stayed inside Aarav long after the rain ended. The following year, Aarav made one final decision. No excuses, no self-pity, no quitting. He created a strict routine. Study before sunrise. School. Tea cart work. Study again at night. Every single day. While the village slept, Aarav fought exhaustion beneath flickering streetlights. Mosquitoes buzzed around him. Winter cold froze his fingers. Sometimes hunger blurred the words on the page. But he continued. Page after page. Night after night. Failure after failure. Until slowly, the subjects that once defeated him began making sense. The morning examination results arrived. Sundarpur Government School overflowed with nervous students once again. Aarav stood silently near the back crowd. Hands trembling. Heart racing. Then suddenly, someone shouted his name. Aarav passed. The hallway erupted in disbelief. Not barely passed. Top scores. Especially in mathematics and physics. The same subjects he once failed repeatedly. Aarav stared at the board speechlessly. His legs nearly gave way beneath him. And far across the hallway, his mother cried openly into her sari. Weeks later, a letter arrived from a National Aviation Academy in Delhi. A full scholarship, training support, pilot sponsorship. Aarav read the letter 3 times before believing it was real. The entire village gathered outside his small home that evening. The same people who once laughed now stood speechless. Children looked at him differently. Parents spoke his name proudly. And high above Sundarpur Village, an airplane crossed the glowing evening sky. This time, Aarav smiled instead of wondering, because for the first time, the dream no longer felt unreachable. Years later, crowds gathered at the newly opened regional airport near Sundarpur. News reporters stood near the runway. Children pressed excitedly against fences. And standing beside the aircraft, wearing a crisp pilot uniform, was Captain Aarav Sharma, the first pilot from the entire state. His mother stood crying proudly in the front crowd. Mr. Iqbal smiled quietly beneath his old cap. As Aarav climbed into the cockpit, he paused briefly, looking toward the same sky he once watched as a poor village boy pushing a tea cart. The engines roared softly to life. And slowly, the aircraft lifted into the clouds. Above the village, above the doubts, above the years of failure. Because sometimes, the people who rise highest are the ones who learned how to keep going long after everyone else expected them to quit. Silent proof that impossible dreams can begin in the smallest places.